Big Z and Big T coming to Champaign. That and more with my good pal Sunny Verma from Locked on Illini coming up next. Let's go. What's up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of From Beyond Champaign. I'm Cody. You can follow me on my new Twitter account at Cody_Illini. I think I'm one follower away from 100, so we're nice. Steadily growing. You know what I mean? So go follow me over there for just strictly Illini content. I'm obviously on TikTok as well if you want to go over there. And I'm joined today with my good pal Sunny Verma from Locked on Illini. I'm in his Discord. We're talking Illini all the time, and it's been a while. The last time I talked to him, I think it was either right before the NCAA tournament or, maybe it was after the Xavier win. I don't exactly remember because my days are just so combobulated together with baseball season in full effect now. So anyway, I had to bring him on here because I haven't done a live show in a few weeks. I've been putting up videos on the YouTube channel reacting to some stuff, but nothing like this. So before we dive into some things, make sure you hit the like button on the YouTube video. Subscribe if you're new here. Really close to 700 subs. So if you are not subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. Sunny, how you doing, man?
Doing good. I love to hear that you're almost at 700 now. I know you just started that Twitter account just not too long ago. So the fact that you're already at almost 100, you're making progress. And Cody, you're one of the hardest working guys on here between the Cubs and the Illini. So, I appreciate you getting some validation for all that grind you keep putting in.
Yeah, I mean, the grind never stops. Don't I know it? The fact that I wanted to get up and do this after what I witnessed at beautiful historic Wrigley Field yesterday, I deserve a lot of credit. But anyway, yeah.
Yesterday was rough.
So, yesterday was rough. So I'm trying to fuel myself back up now with some positive Illinois news over the weekend. And I'm just going to be honest with you before I even really go into my thoughts about it. I think it absolutely sucks that this news outweighed, in a way, the Final Four. Like, this news came out like an hour or two before the Final Four began. And I just feel like in college hoops, like this whole transfer portal era, if it was up to me, they would push it back to once the NCAA tournament is over. Maybe I would be okay with after the, after the first weekend, but it almost like kind of, steals attention away from what makes college basketball. It's a whole nother conversation, but anyway, outside of that, Zvonimir Ivisic commits to Illinois. The guy from Arkansas, Tommy's brother, as we all know. I'll just say that going into it, once he entered the portal, I basically felt like it was a lock that he was coming to Illinois because he makes so much sense in terms of the type of player he is. But I do have concerns when it comes to the defensive side of the ball. That's where I'm at.
Yeah. And it makes sense. Like, I get the concerns, but I just think the potential positives here far outweigh the negatives. All right. Like, Cody, do you remember who was our backup center last year? You don't, because we didn't have one. It was Kerry Booth. Now I feel like it's only Illinois fans that would complain about having a rotational big, a backup center that is showing up on NBA mock drafts, and saying that's a bad thing. Like, for me, it's just, there's just so much positive. First and foremost, it locked in our best player. Tomislav it looks like is not going to be leaving Illinois now, especially that his brother's coming back. And so, with the prices out there right now, with other transfer portal guys, and I saw on evanmaya.com that if Tomislav were to have entered the portal, he'd be a top 3 transfer portal player. I mean, he would have fetched millions of dollars, but by securing the services of his brother, you're securing the services of Tomislav, and that in itself brings you so much value even if Big Z was a complete bum, but he's not a complete bum. Like, he actually does have a skill set that I think that, Brad and Jeff are going to be able to utilize. And so, honestly, I think it's a win-win. There's a potential for like a downside, but it's marginal. I think, especially in the college basketball day and age now, if it doesn't work out, that's fine. You can move on after a year. Tommy's going to be moving on after a year, probably to the NBA. So it's, you're going to probably get a discount on Tomislav. You probably got a discount on Big Z. And again, if it works out, it's going to be a matchup nightmare for the other team on the defensive side.
Yeah. So, sorry, the dog I'm watching is just going off because someone came into our building, but
Okay.
I agree with you. In terms of the money and stuff, like the market for college basketball players, it's insane right now, man. And I was listening to Illini Acquire kind of break it down a little bit, and it kind of makes you feel like, wow, like there are players who are in the NBA who are making less money than college athletes. And that's just crazy to think about. And so while there are pros and there are cons to this whole era, I think a lot of people like to point out the cons. I think there are a lot of pros in terms of, guys coming back or at least staying in college. I think there still needs to be some form of, I want to call it a contract. So, we don't have the Trey Whites and the Sky Clarks of the world playing at 4 schools in 4 years, but they have an incentive to stay in school. And I think that's awesome. And that is good for college basketball. But to be able to keep Tommy after losing Morez Johnson is such a big thing for this team. Because I think you said it many times, and it took me a while to I guess get there with you on that. But the fact that he was, you want to call him most valuable player or most important player, whatever. They played their best basketball when Tommy was healthy and on the court. And so you have him, and now you have his brother there who, let's just be honest about it, he's kind of been a disappointment at this point in his collegiate career. And when he came into Kentucky 2 years ago, he got a lot of hype and just hasn't necessarily hit that peak yet or tapped into that potential. How do you think Brad Underwood and Orlando Antigua can, maybe unlock something from this kid?
From when the rumors were out there that Z was coming to Champaign, I did a little digging on the Kentucky side. And Kentucky fans were pretty bummed out that Big Z was leaving after that freshman year. He had a great first game, and he had an okay rest of the season, but the potential showed. And so for me, when I think about it, it's all about Orlando Antigua, right? Having Orlando employed on Brad Underwood's staff not only got Big Z and Big T over to Champaign, but Big Z had his best season his freshman year under Orlando. We all know Orlando is a great recruiter, but he's also one of the best big men developer in all of college basketball. That's why he makes so much money. I think he's one of the top 10 paid assistants, top 5 even in all of college basketball. It's because of the work he can do. And that's why I just like the idea of getting Zvonimir under Orlando's tutelage for a year, maybe even 2 years. Because again, a best case scenario is Tomislav, bringing him in. He's arguably the top center coming back in the Big Ten Conference, top 5 in the entire country. If you can have his normal year 2 jump, maybe he goes to the NBA next year. And if Zvonimir can just kind of progress a little bit and get closer to living up to his potential, which I think he has a better chance of doing under Orlando Antigua, then you have your starting center next year, because Zvonimir can't leave because he's already declared for the NBA twice. So the next time he declares, he's going straight to the NBA. So, it's kind of like an insurance plan that just has an incredible upside.
Yeah, no, that's a good way to look at it. We got some people in the chat here. Shout out to Philip, Christopher, Ross. Hit that like button if you haven't already. And let us know your thoughts on basically anything Illini, because I haven't done a live show since the offseason began, and there's just been so much going on. I think one of the players for Illinois that's really going to benefit the most from this is Kylan Boswell. And I think next year, I don't want to say this because I feel like he was such a big piece for them last season. Now, I think you can definitely say it wasn't always easy to watch him play, and his three-point shooting was definitely something that I don't understand, considering he was nearly a 40% shooter at Arizona. But we know how he, made strides towards the end of the year, played his best basketball at the end of the year, and now with Tommy and Big Z in Champaign, I think it potentially can open up his game a little bit more, because he's really good at getting to the basket, despite the fact that his shooting percentage from outside wasn't great. And he uses his size to be able to drive and stuff. And I think you have those two guys, whether they're on the court together or not, you're always going to have that big who can step outside, shoot the three, and, forces guys to have to not necessarily come help on those drives to the baskets. And I think that benefits him. So right now, as we speak, I feel like the getting Tommy and Big Z in the Champaign, I think it benefits Kylan the most.
Yeah, I'm expecting a huge year from Kylan next year. Now that he's finally kind of settled in, senior year, he knows it's his last year. The last month of the season, you really saw a jump from Kylan. Maybe not from the three-point shooting side as much, but as you mentioned, his percentages at Arizona were a lot higher than when he came to Illinois. But what's different is at Illinois, I think only 2 months into the season, he already had more free throw attempts than he did the entire year at Arizona last year. And that's what he should be doing with a kid his size. He's really hard to guard for opposing college point guards just because of how, thick he is, essentially, just the way he attacks that basket. And that's something he learned at Illinois, the way he just kind of attacks the rim. We missed that. We missed that from Terrence Shannon Jr. the year prior. And yeah, Kylan was driving us all crazy because I don't think I'd ever seen a player miss more layups than him at the early part of the season, but he corrected it. And, I'm really hoping, it's going to be hard because you got Braden Smith coming back. And then there's one more point guard I can't recall, but, Kylan has potential to be an all Big Ten member next year. And I truly think that he's locked in. He was the first guy to say, hey, I'm coming back next year. I think he's taking this leadership role very strongly. And I think that's just good news for Illinois fans.
Yeah. And something that I've really hammered home in a lot of the content I've been putting out is continuity. I bringing him back with Tommy. As much as I'm still pissed off about Morez Johnson going to Michigan, and when I say pissed off, it's not. I won't say that it's not. It is. It is pure salt. I am as salty as any Illini fan about Morez Johnson going to Michigan, and I think it has a lot to do with the state of college athletics right now, but then also just a lot of what I was saying about the money and stuff like that, and people caring so much about their role, whatever. That's a whole nother topic, right? But despite losing him, you're able to keep Kylan, you're able to keep Ty Rodgers in a very surprising situation, Jake Davis coming back, and then having Tommy return as well. I think that's 4 guys right there that were part of last year's team. Whether Ty Rodgers played or not, he still was part of the Elite Eight team. So he's coming with experience and leadership and grit and toughness. Grit and toughness is what I see the most from him. So interested to see how he plays next year. Obviously, he might be the one that I think we're most intrigued to just see if there's any difference in his game or not. But I like that there's some form of continuity returning, and obviously Brad Underwood and company are not done. So I'm feeling optimistic. I'm a little sad they missed out on Josh Dix, but I don't know. They got KJ in June of last year, and Will Riley were around the same time too. We got a long way to go.
Yeah. And let's be honest, like the first transaction of the offseason were essentially Trey White leaving and Morez Johnson leaving. And then you had those Brad Underwood, haters like just having a field day in every comment section of every Illinois related video out there saying, hey, look at it. Here it's happening again. Brad Underwood cannot keep talent. You fire Brad. No one wants to stay at Illinois. Well, since then, again, you've had Kylan Boswell come back. Tomislav decided to come back. Tomislav, so much so, tells his brother to come to Champaign. Look, if Tommy didn't like it here, he wouldn't want to subject his brother to come to this sort of environment. So obviously he approves of it. Jake Davis has every opportunity to leave. Jake decides to come back and try to get better in Champaign. And you nailed it. The one guy who had all the excuses in the world to leave, Ty Rogers. Ty, after taking a red shirt, decides to come back to Champaign. And so now all of a sudden that narrative about Brad runs everybody out. Well, we have more players returning this year now than we have leaving. And, it's a simple, I know we're all a little salty about Morez Johnson, but I brought this up on a Locked On episode a couple days ago. Morez Johnson he's a good player with a very, very high ceiling. But I think he plays his best at the center position, where right now we have arguably one of the best centers in the world coming back next year. I don't think there's anyone who would rather have Morez Johnson as your starting center next year over Tomislav Ivisic. So, in the long run, I think, at least for, again, the long run now is just season by season. I think Illinois is going to be okay. We'll see what Morez develops into 2-3 years from now, but I think the Morez one hurts more from a culture aspect, right? Just from what Illinois fans, we wanted him to be the next Coleman Hawkins, the guy who stuck around for 3-4 years, because of the story narrative that is around this Illini program about how Brad cycles through rosters. We're looking at Morez, the Chicago local kid, to be the next guy to stay here for 4 years. And who would have thought after all this, it may end up being Ty Rogers.
Yeah. When Zvonimir, the news broke, my immediate reaction was like, would I rather have Morez Johnson or Zvonimir? And at the time, I think I said in my video that I'd rather have Morez Johnson. I don't know if my opinion has necessarily changed. It's not. I think it's more about how do they fill out the rest of the roster, and how are we going to use these two brothers together on this team? Because I do think that Zvonimir has a game that has yet to be really fully untapped. And I can sit here and say that I think Morez Johnson has as high a ceiling, like you just said, as any big man in the country. And he just, it was shown by how many teams are out there that wanted him, right? But I'm also just kind of waiting at the same time to see what they do. And then I think some other big, just what is it, committed to Michigan? And it kind of negates the purpose of why Morez Johnson left Illinois too. So
arguably the best 4 in the transfer portal. Yaxel Ledenberg, I think that's how you say his last name. I'm so bad with names, but Phil will know who I'm talking about in the chat. He's the guy who was my dream candidate for Illinois, and so, but I didn't think we could afford him. I think he's going to stay in the NBA draft. At least I'm hopeful on it. But he committed to Michigan, so it's one of those. Cody, another way to look at it is we know Kylan signed for less than $1 million. Tommy signed for what I've heard right around $1 million. Morez Johnson, depending on which rumor you listen to, signed for anywhere from 1.5 to 1.8. Morez Johnson's not worth more than Kylan Boswell and Tomislav on next year's roster. And even if you decided to pay Morez that money, that's going to eat at the rest of your salary cap in order to try to get, they went after a Josh Dix. They're still after a guy like Dame Sarr. Or if there's another star that's going to still enter the transfer portal, you would have been paying a substantial amount of your NIL funds on Morez, which again, would have been nice to have him in Champaign, but I don't know if the value that he brings on the court is quite equal to the money he was demanding, at least next season.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. And I actually looking at that looking at it from that perspective does make it easier. It's also weird because we're talking about salary caps and college athlete or college basketball, but whatever. Someone in chat said, Ostrich says, is someone that lets opinion influence his loyalty worth getting salty over though? And that, like, the discourse, the new narrative being shaped about Morez Johnson, it's one of the more like head scratching things that happened. This has Adam Miller vibes all over it, and we'll see. Like, in hindsight, it didn't turn out to be a bad situation, or it didn't loom large on Illinois for not finding a way to keep Adam Miller. Will that pan out for Morez? Will that pan out for Illinois again with Morez Johnson? I don't know. I remember when Adam Miller transferred to LSU, and I was like, man, we really going to rebuild in a year. You know, like I thought the world, like, it definitely felt a lot worse than I actually do about this Morez thing, just because there are key pieces returning, and there were key pieces returning for that team too. I mean, that next year Illinois won the Big Ten regular season, so maybe I overreacted even then. But I think now we also know more about Brad and this coaching staff and the success that they've had the last handful of years. So I think that context is probably why I feel fine too. And with NIL and just the transfer portal, like, you can go out and replace a guy any offseason now. And yeah, so it is what it is. I'm looking forward to when Michigan comes to State Farm next season, and it'll be an interesting reception for him, I think. And I think that part of it is what makes sports fun, but also, like, it just didn't have to be this way.
Yeah, it sucks. Like, we keep saying it, and I know it's, repetitious, but this is not why we watch college basketball or college sports, growing up. Like, the whole idea was you got to have that, the high school recruit comes in as a freshman, and you would deal with their flaws because, you're hopeful that they're going to grow into the player that you envision. And then they did, their junior year, their senior year, and then they won a Big Ten award, or you hung their jersey. That journey is no longer there now. Now it's strictly a year to year. You never know who's going to be on your roster, especially with this Brad Underwood and the way he just puts teams together. You kind of miss yesteryear, but it's just like, it's going on everywhere, right? This is not just Illinois, and that's what we just have to keep reminding ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got to remind my good pal Greg Braggs that, hey, there are guys transferring from Purdue too. He likes to push this whole, like, people come to Purdue because of culture and, like, all this, like, you wait your turn with Painter and you'll have success. And it's like, dude, everyone's transferring. Everyone's transferring. It just save me, spare me. All right. Spare me your Purdue propaganda that is not true.
It's just funny though, because when Trey White and Morez had left, again, the common comment from all the Brad Underwood haters was like, "Well, see, look at Michigan State, look at Purdue, they never lose anybody." And literally just a day or two later, Michigan State lost 3 guys to the transfer portal, which just shocked everybody. Purdue lost Heidi, and I forget who the other kid is. But again, it's just reality. It's going to happen now. Money talks, agents talk. There's back channeling, that's happening. There's even rumors out there about Braden Smith leaving. He can probably get $5-6 million if he wanted to. And it's just, it is what it is. But I do like the fact that in this sort of like scenario, in this world, in this environment, Brad Underwood and Orlando Antigua are the guys you want in charge, because in chaos, they're very good at being patient, not overpaying, and like going out and finding the right pieces and not panicking. And so if you're an Illini fan, at least in this environment, you got to be grateful for that at least.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Philip says Morez going to get booed the moment he gets off the bus till he fouls out. Yeah. I hope the Big Ten refs continue to screw him like they screwed him a lot this year. He also says Sincere Harris to Cincinnati and Amani Hansberry to Virginia Tech. Chester Frazier got the new job at Virginia Tech, right?
A head coach, or I mean, associate head coach. So
Yeah,
he's like the number one assistant at Virginia Tech. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good for him. I like to see that. I'm always rooting for him, and I'm rooting for Roger Powell Jr. obviously too.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, this is like basically all I really have. I think to kind of round this all out, I'm feeling better about the roster at this moment. Still, I think the big thing now is whether it's Sarr if he decides to come to Illinois, or another guy out in the portal. I still think they need to add some shooting. They need to add an athletic wing type player. To me, like that's where they still need to go, and they're gonna have to bring in some other small pieces. Like they're gonna have to find a way to replace Dre Gibbs Lawhorn, and I don't know if that's one of the incoming freshmen that's part of next year's class or someone else, but they're not close to done, and there's multiple holes to fix, but I'm cautiously optimistic. Basically, that's where I'm at. Just give me a reason to get really excited. What do we got to do to get Will Riley to stay? You know what I mean? Like, right. What do we got to do?
Yeah. No. Obviously, that would be a home run. Obviously, if you're the Illini, but I agree. The thing. It's nice that we've got so many positions locked down already. With this whole retention, we're not replacing 10 guys. We're not having Brad and Orlando and Jeff Alexander and Tyler and all the coaching staff going out there, scouring the world to try to get 10 guys to come back. Now that we have a foundation set, we can focus all of our energy, all of our efforts on finding, the top maybe 2 or 3 more guys who are going to be big-time contributors to next year's roster. I said this on Locked On Illini. I truly believe that the best player on next year's team is not on the team yet. Like he's going to be some sort of transfer portal acquisition whose name we haven't heard of at this point. Look, last year, as you mentioned, we didn't get Kasparis until I believe May 21st, and we didn't get Will Riley until June 23rd. And Tomislav somewhere in between, like May 5th or something like that. So our 3 best players from last year's roster, we had never even heard of a year ago today. And so I feel really confident that, whether maybe it's Will Riley, and if it's Will Riley, then that's fine. That's all that matters. But even if it's not Will, we still have the funds available to, I think, there's back channeling going on right now, right? Like I know it's a dead period, but that doesn't mean the conversations aren't happening. And so it's going to be very interesting for me to see like when a certain name pops up, is Illinois going to be immediately associated with him? And then we'll kind of get a chance to see what our roster looks like. But the good part is we already know what 70% of our roster looks like, whereas a year ago we had no idea, and that was a lot more stressful.
Yeah. No, I keep seeing Will Riley put on his Instagram story like whenever news drops, he's just like sharing it to his story, and it's immediately I'm like, oh, is this a sign? Like, because a lot of guys are like, the season ends and they just completely break, you know what I mean? And he's still sharing Illini stuff. And like, I love that. That's awesome. Like, I don't know if Will Riley will go to the NBA and play right away. I think a lot of people feel like he's like a G League guy in year 1. I just think that if he's spends an entire summer with Adam Fletcher, gets stronger, like his in-season development, like body-wise, was incredible this year. Give him the full summer with Adam Fletcher. He could, maybe take an even bigger leap in year 2 and find himself as, a much higher draft pick after year 2. I mean, it just depends on what he and his family think is best. And I think he's either going to the draft or he's coming back to Illinois. I don't think he's going to transfer and go to some other school. Like that's where I'm at. But I know it's like, I'd probably give it like a 10% chance that he comes back.
Yeah, I think I said 15 to 20% chance. The fact that he was so emotional after that Kentucky game where, he was crying and wishing, he had done better. And as you said, even after the season, he still continues to share Illini-related content. That has me admittedly more optimistic than I was maybe a month ago, where I was sure Will would go to the NBA. Now, we're at least approaching the idea that there could be an argument depending on where he falls. I've seen him, as high as I think 15 in mock drafts, and I've seen him as low as the second round. If you're in the second round, then I absolutely think, as you mentioned, year 2 Will Riley under Fletch and being the main guy, the point guy, another playmaker to add with Kylan Boswell. He has all Big Ten potential and the potential to jump up into the secure himself in the top 15, if not even higher. NBA players love his build and his skill set, and so if he gains a little weight, 15, 20 pounds, which of course under Fletch he can, and he just continues to develop offensively, and I think he can play himself into a higher draft pick next year. It's all going to be about the feedback that he gets at these draft camps.
Yeah, no, I agree. All right, man. Well, any final thoughts? I got nothing. I'm just excited to see where the rest of this offseason goes toward, and I'm rooting for Florida tonight.
I don't know who I'm rooting for. I'm rooting for one thing. If you're an Illini fan, the Nike Hoop Summit is starting this week, and so we have potentially 2 future Illini playing, Tomislav and David Merkovitz, and their teammates. And so I don't know exactly when the games are. I know they're on Peacock and one other channel, but tune into those games, because then you can kind of get a glimpse of, Tomislav has as much hype coming into next year as a guy like Will Riley and KJ. Now, he's not committed to Illinois, but it seems like if he's going to come to Illinois or to college, it's going to be Illinois. So, you could be getting a glimpse of one of the next future star at Illinois at this Nike Summit, which I think is in Portland right now.
Yeah, no, I heard about that last week. I definitely will be, paying attention. At least I don't know if I'll be able to watch it live, but I'll definitely be paying attention, and I'm sure the highlights will be all over my timeline. So, this guy Sar is he's been talked about a ton on Illini Twitter, and yeah, he sounds like the type of player that I'm talking about in terms of what they need next, in terms of a higher ceiling type player that can be a difference maker. You got to replace. Essentially, we've got to replace Will Riley and KJ. I think you're bringing back some solid vets now. You're going to need that star, the stars to show up. So be interested to find out how it plays out, man. But should be fun, and yeah, it's just nice to be in the situation, I guess, considering where we were a week and a half ago.
Yeah, I mean, truly, as much activity as Illinois has had, if you compare our roster to a lot of other Big Ten rosters right now, there's a lot of other fan bases that are a lot more in panic mode than we are. So right now, as just to wrap it up, I think we can use our resources to really go after ace players, A+ A type of players out there, and then it's just nice that I know even if we just average or get average players to fill out our roster, we have a decent Big Ten team next year. Now, if we're able to get the star players, then I think all of a sudden, once again, we're at least in contention for the Big Ten Conference, and that's all you can really ask for.
Yeah. I know there will be fans who, rightfully so, asking for more, but we'll see where this roster is come July, and I'll set my expectations, but I have no doubt that they're going to put one together where I will find myself sitting in this chair talking about a ceiling. We'll be talking about a ceiling all next. I think I'm really excited about just letting that be a bit for it doesn't have to be just me. I feel like Illini fans should just lean into it, because so many opposing fan bases make fun of us for talking about last year's ceiling being so high and just like it never really got touched, So I'm looking forward to talking about a ceiling that can go sky high.
I'm actually creating a T-shirt just saying that my team has a higher ceiling than yours, just because it triggers other fan bases so much whenever we mention that. So stay tuned for that.
I might have to get one of those. Okay. All right. Well, again, before we get out of here, hit that like button on the video. Subscribe if you're new here. I always forget to put the Discord in the description. So, Sunny, if you want to drop the Discord link in the chat,
sure,
for the show, feel free. Discord has almost 200 people in there. I don't know.
Yeah, we should hit 200 sometime this week, which is incredible. The amount of growth that Discord channel has. Again, it's like almost 200 of us Illini fans spread all across the country, right? Just when new names pop up, it's an instantaneous way to communicate with other Illini fans, and so I highly recommend you joining if you have Discord.
Yeah. No, I'm in there as well, and it's a lot of fun. So, and it's cool to talk with more. How do I say this? Cool to talk with more sensible Illini fans, which you might not see in message boards or on Twitter, or in sometimes YouTube comment sections too. So, yeah. Anyway. I will, as news comes out, I'll be back here on the channel talking about it, whatever. It might not be live. So hit the subscribe button and turn those notifications on. You'll get those notifications sent to you. So we'll just follow along. And yeah, also in that Discord, there is an MLB Slack. So sometimes I saw Sunny in there today talking about how the Cubs need to go sign David Robertson. I'm with you, man. Right.
Yeah.
So
that was the name. I couldn't think of the name.
It's more than just Illinois. That he just kind of has it set up for just a lot of everything. So it's a lot of fun. But yeah, I will see you all in the next video. Sunny, thanks for joining me, man.
Of course, always.
Awesome. All right, see you guys later. ILL.